Okay, our first news topic of the week, Gamescom 2024 opening night live. Towards the end of the show, we saw a really fantastic Indiana Jones demo. I mean, everything we've seen from Indiana Jones so far has been pretty fantastic. Okay. I still think that trailer that they put out earlier in the year is probably the best game debut trailer I've seen in a long, long time. Anyway, game is looking fantastic. Trailer concludes. Logos come up. Game Pass, Xbox, Steam. Okay, yeah, fair enough. And then Jeff Keighley comes out with, oh, we've got one more thing for you. And then a PlayStation 5 logo appears. All hell breaks loose. People seem intent on asking for or demanding the resignation of Phil Spencer, which is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. Um, but it is fair to say that it is it's a contentious thing, and it has happened, and we've got to comment on it. I've got my own thoughts about this, but Alex, I'm going to come to you first on this one.
Oh, probably the wrong guy to ask about this. For
yeah, because you don't care.
I don't care. So I didn't feel anything when that came up.
You felt nothing.
I felt nothing. I was just excited to see, I guess, more Indiana Jones. And in this case, I guess I'm excited for other people who will get to see it and play it for themselves on PlayStation consoles. PS5 and presumably PlayStation 5 Pro.
Yeah.
So that's really great for them. I also think Indiana Jones is just such a ubiquitous character in popular culture that, especially in North America, where the PlayStation 5 is just, way further ahead than the Xbox, that if you really want to reach those aging Gen Xers who want to play Indiana Jones, probably do it through a PlayStation 5 or PC or something like that. And I feel like, yeah, just get more people in there playing Indiana Jones. It's great.
Yeah, that's it really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oliver, I'd be interested in your thoughts about this. Obviously, there's a lot of concerned Xbox console owners out there who are wondering, well, what's going on here? If the exclusives for my console are actually going to go multi-platform, what does this mean for the health of the ecosystem generally? And what does it mean for me as an Xbox console owner? What's your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, I think, frankly, I think when you look at the various efforts that have gone to PlayStation, I think they've been really well received. I think this is the only move that really makes sense from a business perspective, given that reality. I mean, I remember playing Sea of Thieves on PS5 for our coverage, and I was entering lobbies of people who'd never played the game, who had no real idea that this game even probably existed for a long time, whereas I'd played it 5 years ago and, largely been interested in it, but not played too much of it since. So it was not that exciting for me. It was not very novel to me. But I mean, a lot of people don't have every single console plus every single high-end PC piece of graphics hardware. So they're in a position where these games actually do mean a lot to them when they arrive to the PlayStation platform and not just, on Xbox or Switch. But I do understand the backlash because ever since Xbox came onto the scene, really for the entire history of game consoles, it's really been very heavily about high quality exclusive titles. And I don't know. I mean, I think that ultimately these are very, very similar boxes. I don't think that there's that much exciting in a game existing only on PlayStation or only on Xbox. Perhaps that changes a bit with the addition of the PlayStation 5 Professional into the mix. But it doesn't really matter that much to me. It's all plastic bins, plastic boxes, like you say, Rich, with basically the same hardware inside. And I mean, ultimately, basically what we're seeing here is a situation that I think is probably fated in the cards, that most, if not all, these Xbox titles will end up being multi-platform. So to me, this is kind of already priced in. I don't really put too much stock in any particular game arriving on PlayStation or any particular game arriving across any other platform from Microsoft, because I just think, this is just the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future, certainly, that these games will arrive on PlayStation in a very comparable form.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, this is interesting. I mean, where do we begin with this? I can understand why some people are sort of confused and upset and angry, because the paradigm of the idea of the console is under threat, I'd say. There's going to be a transition point. The Xbox of the future, I mean, Phil is literally saying in interviews, prepare for more change is coming. And the hints that he's given so far, I'd say, are actually really good changes. I mean, just the hint that we're going to see competing stores on an Xbox kind of suggests that it's going to become more like a Steam Deck-like device, in that, it sits on a relatively open operating system. You could install the stores that you want. And then, you also gain all of the advantages of that platform, mods, composition, actual competition. There's a lot going on there potentially for the future of Xbox. The present of Xbox, though, is that obviously, we've got the series consoles which haven't quite performed. Yeah, and these guys might be feeling slightly concerned, but nothing really changes, does it? If you bought an Xbox, then probably one of the major reasons you bought it is that you had an Xbox before and you wanted continuity from your digital library, which is probably the same reason why a lot of PlayStation 4 users bought PlayStation 5s.
Right.
It's pointed out to me recently that we shouldn't be looking at hardware sales. We should be looking at the monthly users, the active users, and to track that over time. And, I'm told that we'll just see, that those active users are basically the same. Xbox users are upgrading to a newer Xbox. PlayStation users are upgrading to a newer PlayStation, right? So, yeah, what you've got to you've got to change the status quo there to actually attract new users. Going for PC the way Xbox did was a good move. PlayStation has followed suit in a different way. What's going to happen next? I don't know. Now, if you're producing games that are going to be going onto a system as open and as widespread as the PC, that's actually fundamentally more impactful than just, porting to other consoles, And, there's obviously the argument that, okay, I bought an Xbox, but if I bought a PlayStation, I could get the PlayStation games and the Xbox games. Well, guess what? That's been happening for years now on PC.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I see it as a good thing. And, we've got to understand that if the amount of people on consoles isn't increasing, and we've had confirmation of that from both Sony and Microsoft, if that isn't changing, but the cost of developing these games is moving into like motion picture territory, up to like $300-400 million, then, obviously they've got to be paid for some way. And the way that's going to happen is through proliferation across as many platforms as will host those games. Xbox users still get Game Pass, right? So, Indiana Jones is still going to be day one on Game Pass on the Ultimate tier, caveat. So there's still that as well. There's so many different components to it. I don't think Xbox console users have actually lost anything as such. Obviously, the other platforms have gained, but that is revenue that's going back into the Xbox ecosystem, and it's just kind of makes sense. And ultimately, that's where I think everyone, bar Nintendo possibly, is going to end up. So, yeah, it's going to be a transition. It's going to feel odd. It's going to feel weird because we just don't expect this. We've never seen it before, really. But the direction of travel, we've been moving in this direction for years now. So it's just the next step. I want to sort of take a couple of supporter questions on this because there were some interesting comments that came up. Let's take this one first from Mark Smith. With the buzz/fanfare around Indiana Jones, do you think Xbox should have waited to announce the PlayStation 5 version? It seems that the online discourse I have seen has been mixed to negative about their but wait, there's more moments at the end of their presentation. It wasn't actually their presentation, it was Jeff's. Just should point that out. Should Xbox have given their customers some breathing room before announcing the PlayStation release? The thing is, we've been calling for like more transparency from Xbox for ever since these multi-platform rumors hoved into view. We're getting it now, and I think that's generally a good thing. What do you think about that, Oliver?
I think there's no good way to break the news to Xbox customers who are really invested in this platform and people who really, really care about this stuff. There's no good way to say, hey, these games that you've been playing that you cherish as an Xbox exclusive player, if you are really invested in this platform stuff, those are headed to PlayStation, which is a platform that you've grown to dislike. I don't think you're ever going to save those people, unfortunately. And I don't think there's any... Alex is going to go flying, but I mean, there are people
what is going on
right?
here, man? Yeah,
there are people like this, unfortunately, which is the locus of this question, I presume. But yeah, I mean, there's no way to tell people, hey, we're going to bring our games to PlayStation, which I assume is going to be, again, the vast majority of Xbox titles, if not all of them. There's no good way to tell them that. I mean, if they are really invested, you could say all at once, all these titles are going. You could kind of read between the lines and say, okay, these titles are coming, but they're going to announce them one at a time, or you could kind of be left in the dark and just be surprised and very upset when titles do get announced. But I don't think it's Microsoft's duty to solve the feelings of people who have kind of less expectations around console fidelity or something that'll only be on one system.
What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I think breaking the news, in spite of how I just don't like emotionally understand it, I think it's not easy to convince, this decades long group of followers, perchance, that things are going to be coming different at some point in the future. And I think that's mainly it. Like you said, these are like adjustments. And I think that's why it's good, at least now, that Phil Spencer is saying, expect more change. Unlike earlier at the beginning of the year, where it felt a little bit more, we're experimenting, like their college phase or whatever. And here I feel they're laying the hints a lot heavier about that things are actually going to be very, very different.
I just can't believe you made that. Actually, I can believe you made that analogy. But
I'm sorry, I just had to. But
okay, we've got. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Please continue.
But yes, I think it's better off now, and I'm like Oliver. I do think I think actually every title's going to be coming to PlayStation in the future. Man, like a lot of these titles would it would be better for them, especially anything that is a multiplayer component.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking about like the next Gears, and like if it's only Xbox and PC users, that's a good chunk of people. But the PlayStation market is so large, and it's a third-person cover shooter. Like it just seems all like it just makes a lot of sense. And I feel like they should do that. I'm just curious about what the next title announced would be. Starfield's on now it's coming into year 2 soon. It has this Shattered Space expansion. I'm curious if there's some opportunity there to get a lot more Starfield sales. Another thing I'm also curious about is day and date releases, because we've seen with PC titles in the past, if they're not day and date, it actually ends up not probably selling as well as it could, because there has to be like a second marketing and hype cycle that needs to be built up. Not all games have that second wind in them to actually be really successful with late releases on PC. So I'm curious if that is a thing, like if Indiana Jones is only coming to PlayStation 5 later here because maybe the game is quite literally not ready because they only made this decision mid-development at some point. I'm just very curious as to why it's a little bit later here.
I don't know. I think there is still, a transition period to handle, and there is still a lot of console users out there. It's a delicate situation, and it's been really tough to handle, and it's clear that you just can't please everyone with this. That said, let's go to this question from Nusco. Man, he's going in there. He's going in hard, as they say. As Xbox's policies swing wildly from side to side, analysing their strategy feels increasingly futile. It's likely they don't have a cohesive strategy at all. Microsoft, being a stock-driven company, flourishes during booms and goes into survival mode during busts. Now we're in a bust. So Xbox seems focused on their internal conflicts and throwing ideas at the wall while staring at the bottom line. But this bust won't last forever. When it ends, what do you think will happen? Will Xbox emerge stronger thanks to their robust portfolio? Or will they over-milk their franchises into irrelevance like Disney is doing with Marvel and Star Wars? When the next video gaming boom arrives, will COD and Halo still be iconic names? I'm going to tackle this one. It seems to be 2 questions here. It's really difficult to over-milk your franchises in a world where it takes 5 years to make a game. I would venture to suggest. I don't think that's too much of a problem. You can level sort of accusations perhaps at Call of Duty and those type of games that have a yearly cadence, but they've kind of been established. It kind of works some years, it doesn't work some other years, but it still seems to be successful. Halo, I think, is something entirely different and kind of probably needs a rethink, since Halo Infinite just wasn't quite where it should have been at launch. Took a while to get where it needed to be in multiplayer, and I still think the campaign side of things was just woefully underserved. But let's put that aside for a moment and talk about the strategy side of things. I think there's been a coherent strategy. I just think that it's kind of been drip fed to us in stages. I think the strategy has always been to go multi-platform. I think it just makes sense for the reasons we've talked about. I do think there is some sticking points over the messaging, like 6 months ago, where Phil was talking about, okay, we're going to start with 4 games and see how those go, because they would know the player base. They would have likely expectation levels of how well they would do. They knew Sea of Thieves was going to be pretty monstrously large on PlayStation 5. Mm-hmm. And, ruling out, actually, no, he didn't rule out Starfield and Indiana Jones, but he just said it wasn't in those initial 4 games. And actually, in an interview, I think with The Verge, he said, I'm never going to rule out a game appearing on PlayStation. However, with that said, let's consider Indiana Jones. And, since we're talking about Disney, let's consider the multiverse. I think that you could put out Indiana Jones on the PlayStation in and in all of those separate universes that comprise the multiverse, it's going to be a monster hit. It's a slam dunk. Maybe in the universe where Tom Selleck was Indiana Jones, quite as big. But yeah, so I suspect that at some point the multi-platform decision was made, and it's just kind of like been maybe some missteps in actually talking about how this was going to roll out. And I think last week we were talking about the ripping off the Band-Aid strategy, just to get it out there. Maybe too much of that news at one time would have been too much. That said, when you've got Indiana Jones appearing on PlayStation 5, all bets are off, I think. I think every major Xbox game will be on PlayStation at some point, but maybe we should be thinking about it in different terms, which is to say that every first-party Microsoft game will eventually appear on every platform that can host it.
Awesome.
And yeah, so, there's going to be a ton of Switch and Switch 2 games, I'd say, which I think is great. It's just that the role of the Xbox is still up in the air, and we know there's a new Xbox coming. What form is it going to take? That's what's exciting me next. And when is it going to come? That's the next thing, because while the existing console paradigm is still sort of, the status quo, it is putting the series consoles in a bit of a weird place, right? Mm-hmm. What could I say? I just think the Band-Aid has been ripped off now. I mean, if and Phil is literally saying expect war change, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what that change is going to be, because ultimately we want to have thriving console businesses, or gaming businesses rather, and that's going to require addressing the fact that there seems to be a cap on the amount of people out there that actually want to play on consoles. That's the bottom line. I think it's like 200 million, 250 million. I've also seen mooted as kind of this net figure of people that are into console gaming, and it's not increasing. Maybe the percentages between the platform holders shift between the generations, but it's not increasing, which is really sort of concerning when you've got like motion picture sized budgets for video games.